Do you yearn for travel that involves outdoor adventure and learning? I do. I also have a passion for all things farming and agriculture. I've traveled to exotic jungles to learn about growing chocolate. I even once owned my own organic vegetable and sunflower farm. And now I'm planning my journey back to agriculture. Agritourism, defined as travel that involves some type of agricultural experience. Agritourism is all about entertaining. But the marketing strategist in me knows that at its core, agritourism is really about educating, and education affects change. My future farm needs to deliver a profound experience to all of its visitors. It needs to educate people about food, health, and climate. Join me to learn from experienced agritourism farmers and entrepreneurs and help me build my future farm strategy. And who knows, maybe one day soon you'll find yourself in a tropical jungle cutting open cacao pods with a machete, or savoring an outdoor plant-to-plate community dinner with 100 guests at a farm in Illinois. So let's tap into the agritourist in you. Welcome to the Agritourist Podcast. This is your host, Jen Ross. I had the pleasure of interviewing Rachael Jones from Locavore Farm. I have to admit, I didn't know what locavore meant before prepping for this interview. And if you don't know the definition, you will learn about it real soon. My interview with Rachael was very compelling. I related to her on many levels. She and her husband had successful careers and lived outside of Chicago raising their kids. Life was good and starting to go by very quickly. They could have kept this lifestyle going and would have been fine. But they were unfulfilled in many ways and wanted more out of life. They took the leap and purchased a farm. That's a story in itself. But then they knew they couldn't sustain a farm through farmers markets and the traditional farming means, and they were also hungry for community. So although there were several financial and regulatory challenges along the way, they embraced agritourism and now bring over 100 guests to their farm on Thursdays and Saturdays to dine on the land. This Dine on the Land experience is truly unique and has created a significant sense of community that is now extending way beyond Illinois and attracting customers from all parts of the country and abroad. Let's get started and meet Rachael.
Hi.
Hi, Rachael. How are you?
I'm good. I apologize for being late.
Oh, no, you're a minute late.
Is that all?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I ran pretty fast. I came down from the barn. Yeah, my cow was starting to eat our flower box arrangements. And because it has clover in them. So, yeah. So I was like hustling her, and cows don't move that fast, so she would have been late.
It's all good. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time for this. I appreciate it. I'm really excited to talk to you. I actually did a little research and listened to a few other podcasts you were a part of. So Rachael Jones from Locavore Farm in Grant Park, Illinois. And I have to admit, I did not know what locavore meant. And so I had to look it up. And it said a person who makes an effort to eat food that is grown, raised, or produced locally, usually within 100 miles. So I have to ask first, how did you come up with that name?
Well, that's exactly what we were wanting to achieve, but not 100 miles. We like to say 100 steps at a 100-foot table. So this is the absolute illustration of local because it's on the land. And that's why we then call it Dine on the Land, which is the experience we use to as a way to market our food, the food that we grow. So, the idea was that the table is a locavore's table. They're consuming local food. And as they do the farm tour and as they look, there's many examples of ways that they can actually grow food for themselves as well. So it's meant to be an inspiration to grow the most local food, which is your own food.
Excellent. I love the name. I really do. Now that I understand what it means. So take me back. I know that I just want to go back before I really do want to focus on the Dine on the Land because I think it's such a unique experience. It shouldn't be, but it is. And hopefully one day it won't be just a unique experience. But tell me, I know you grew up in the Chicago area, and I know you lived in Australia for a period of time, and then you came back. So just give me a brief understanding of that, and then also what you took, because I know you what you took from that experience, especially being in another country for a period of time, and what that brought back when you came back to America.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely think that being involved, or at least being raised in different cultures or experiencing different cultures, you're able to remember how they experience food. And I would say that there were many diverse ways in which food was being shared. However, the table or the gathering was always a piece, and it was because I also spent time in Mali, West Africa. I've spent time in Bonaire. I've spent time in Mexico as well. And food is celebrated. Sometimes I feel much more, it's more different than here in that you really do slow down around mealtime. And also, everyone is growing something, whether it's the garnish on top of the plate, whether it's just the tomato to be sliced. It is very and fairly regular to be a hunter and gatherer for your own meal. So my husband and I have always done that. We've been married over 2 decades now, about 26 years. And one way in which we definitely get along is how we grow food and cook food friends around the table. That's our love language with one another as well as with our community. And so we've grown food in any urban location we've been in to a suburban. We've gathered people around our table, whether it's in a tiny apartment as a military couple, all the way to obviously building 100-foot table and setting it out on our farm. We love it. We love the idea that everything else stops. And just the conversation about the actual food in the moment, the taste and the bites, where it came from, all the way through talking about the deepest things that mean the most to you, and sharing memories that way. So I would say that that is something that, from Australia to Africa and all the way around, I always really paid attention to the hospitality or the dining experience in each of those locations. And while varied, there is definitely, just the sameness of gathering around for that conversation. I will say that in Africa, Bonaire, and even in Mexico, the meal lingers so late into the evening, which I do love. And we just finished up a Dine on the Land this past weekend, and people were still gathered around the table at 11 o'clock at night. So
That's great. So, okay, so you're both working. You came back, you're in the US, you were both working, and then what what happened that, and I know you obviously gardened and had your own, you were growing things, but what was that transition from working to we're going to own a farm?
yes, yes, that's what we love to share on the farm tour when people come here. And so here's the thing, we were moving about life the way, you feel that pressure. It's build the comfortable, safe life. One that you can measure, one that you can predict. That means it's successful. No major risks or pitfalls. Just get to a point where it is easy, it is predictable, it is comfortable. You can do what you want to do when you want to do it. And we were on that track. And when we were married 11 years before we had kids, and I will say when we had our kids, we were sitting in the living room, and he's working his corporate job, and I'm working mine. And we were just, slowed down, which is always required for ideas. And he turned to me and he said, I don't want to do this anymore. Now, of course, you get speechless, like, well, what do you mean by that? But I knew exactly what he was talking about, because we had this desperate look at one another, and it was either we keep going and this is what it is, and this is a good, safe, comfortable life. We'll have retirement. We'll, spend time with the kids when we've retired, all of that. But we knew and felt that we would be missing out on really our calling, what we love, and really an adventure that we believe, would educate our kids on how to live life well. And that has very little to do with being safe and very little to do with being comfortable, but it has everything to do with being full and having purpose and serving others, and living through trials and living through hardship, and learning how to navigate that. And to us, there was no better example for that than the farming family. And so we wanted to jump all the way in. And so we ended up finding a 5-acre parcel in about 25 miles south of where we live, which is very different from the suburb we were living in. And we knew that we wanted to grow food, and we knew that we wanted to establish a family business where we all work together. And when we looked at what the possibilities of that was, I had participated in assisting with the marketing of farmers markets in the past. And I recalled, these farming families showing up on a Saturday, which is like the only day for everybody to be on the farm working on a project, but instead they're standing in a parking lot with their food harvested and in boxes. And I remember that if we didn't market the market well that day, or if weather was lousy, those farmers were taking wilted lettuce back into their car. They were just giving it away. And I said to my husband, this is not what I want to be a part of. I love farmers markets, but what I think our calling is what we love to do, and that's around the table. Ultimately, we're growing food for the table anyway. So what we wanted to do is really structure our entire operation, from the chickens that we raise to the pork that we raise, the vegetables, even the flowers for the table. Everything was aligned with the dates that we would have dinner, so that we could harvest from the land and dine on the land and consume that.
So how long did it take from the time you purchased the property? And did this property have a house on it, or was it just...
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The property that we purchased was a 5-acre property. It was actually organic soil, not certified, but it hadn't participated in any of the industrial farming. So what's amazing is that parcel had originally been organic popcorn fields. And then when the owners who we purchased from took over it was after the popcorn farming, because organic popcorn was not popular back in the 70s, and 80s. That's when we're like, mass chemical, everybody's happy with that. And so when they began to build their homestead, which only was a small family garden, they knew that they weren't going to be participating in spreading chemicals around the field. So we were able to move in. Now their garden was about 10 by 20. We ended up putting in about an acre worth of food after that. But we purchased the property 2014, and we opened with our first dinner June 2015. So it was a quick spin around. And that's kind of how my husband and I work. If we say we're going to do it, we're going to get it done. We become obsessed with it.
So how many guests did you have that first dinner?
Well, that is a story I love to share, because the concept here in the Midwest of dining on a farm was pretty far-fetched to get people to participate. It's like a barbecue in your backyard. What are we talking about here? Whereas on the West Coast, you have, the vineyards, and you have wine country, and agritourism's there, where you're growing and people are consuming the fruit of what's grown on that land, particularly wine, obviously. And then the East Coast too has somewhat of an idea of this, as well, and farms where we're doing that. But here in the Midwest, where it is, I'm in a huge agricultural community. We are hundreds of acres of corn, soy, this rotation going on. Excuse me. And so the idea of sitting on a farm and coming to a farm to look at something sounds absurd, because 500 acres of a cornfield's rather boring, and there's no structures on that field either. So I knew that we needed to introduce the community to this locavore table. What does this look like? And also around here, you say 5 acre farm, and they say that's not a farm, where technically it's just a farm according to the USDA. So the whole idea was, reintroducing people to this idea of when you grow food, when you sell food, that is a food producing operation. And it doesn't necessarily mean we have to get into the commodities. So I went to farmers markets, I went to markets, and I said, we're going to have this introductory dinner. There's seatings at 12, 2, 4, and 6 on June 20th, 2015. I partnered with a friend who does like markets, art markets. And so she was going to run her vendors. At the same time, we were going to have these seatings and introduce people to this idea, to Locavore and to our Dine on the Land experience. And each slot sold out with 100 people. So that day we fed 400 people, and we haven't done that since, not in the same day at least. And we also ended up having about 1,200 people that would just come, look at the vendor booths, and stare at the table to see what was going on. It was a great introduction to the table. And from that day, I remember it was the evening, the place was completely trashed. Our farm was just such a mess. And we were absolutely exhausted. I looked at our garden, all the cabbage. I mean, we went beyond that succession of cabbage that we had specifically, carved off for the event. We'd taken, we were just picking and harvesting, and everyone thought it was amazing. Like, oh, look, they're harvesting and making coleslaw, and they're harvesting. Oh, everything was being done in front of everyone, and they loved it. And they loved the idea of sitting shoulder to shoulder, sitting at this long table, which is just an incredible performance of food. It's like you're watching food perform for you as it's being served at the table, and it's on display. And so then we did it every month thereafter. And now we basically, from when we open now, May through December, we are every Thursday and Saturday.
Wow. So tell me, bring me through a Saturday experience. So I arrive, what happens?
Sure. You arrive, it's 5 o'clock, which is just like the perfect time of day on a Saturday in the summer. And you check in at our little yellow house where we, make sure that guests know where things are. And also we accommodate dietary restrictions, and so we confirm all of that. And then everyone makes their way down to our big, we call it the White Barn. We have an indoor and outdoor bar. We have plumbed restrooms, so you're actually going to a bathroom. We have our store there as well. We also have our large indoor barn space where if it rains, we have the table covered as well. And guests come and really they start taking in the gardens and the fields and the animals. Our cows and sheep walk around the dinner table. So
wow, that's great.
I'd say the ones that behave do. So it's just a little tiny flock that always sticks together of our Jacob's sheep. And then Bethel, who is our Jersey dairy cow, she loves to just, like, even Saturday, she just walked along the 100-foot table, and people just gasp because it's so incredible, So people are, getting their bourbon lemonade or their, wine selection for the meal. And a lot of times we ended up actually excavating a large water reservoir, which is the size of a lake. And we've planted native prairie all around it because our farm is really a permaculture farm where we're putting in permanent agricultural systems so that we have food for future generations, The idea is that we have living roots in the ground year round. And so for us, conservation with production is key. Permaculture, just to give you a quick little look into that, it's where ecology, agriculture, landscape, and sustainability all converge. And that is how we approach growing food. So at times it can be a little bit of a slower process, but it's a permanent process. And obviously, just like regenerative agriculture, our focus is soil health all the way through. So we believe that's with permanent agricultural practices, is that's how you maintain soil health. You're building season over season. So the back end of our property, where the white barn and where everyone stops at the bar, is surrounded by, I call it lakefront property now. It's huge, and native prairie. And then around 5:45, 6 o'clock, we ring the dinner bell. Everybody with glass in hand walks the farm with me. I tell them our stories, our recent farm lessons of patience, endurance, hope, trials that we've encountered for the season, because there are always trials, any of the hardships, in an effort to share and inspire people to keep going, keep moving forward. Plants are an incredible example of faith, hope, and perseverance, because when you're planting, you have to believe it's going to be what it says it's going to be. So we walk around the farm, then we ring the big dinner bell, and we all go sit at the 100-foot table where we serve multiple courses. My staff, everyone is a farmer. We're all farm hands. I always tell people, my guests, this is not a restaurant experience. This is a farm experience. And so we eat each course together. We serve it. We have a 16-foot smoker, so a lot of the food is smoked, it's charred, it's roasted, it's fresh. Many of the garnishes are being picked while guests are there, so they're seeing my staff interact with the food, and then they see it on their plate. And then after dinner is over, and mind you, through dinner, people are getting up and they're taking pictures during golden hour. The table, that whole experience is situated on the west side of our property, so the sunsets are incredible. So people will pause. Here's what I love. I mean, from a marketing perspective, I love it when people have their phones out. But here's what I'm going to tell you. What I love even more is that those phones go away and I don't see that screen, because people are actually taking in the moment. They're taking in the stranger next to them. The person that they brought, they're actually having a conversation with. There's no TVs hanging on walls all around you. And you're also not worried about being pushed out for the next table to come back in. We're there for 4.5, 5 hours. It is an experience, and it is time away. And after dinner, we light a huge bonfire and we roll out our s'more cart, and everyone either walks back around the property or sits down for a fire, and then they go home.
That sounds amazing. You must be so proud that these ideas manifested. Like it sounds amazing.
I'm pleased. I actually really do delight in the work that we do each day. And I can say that that was something that my husband and I were missing, was that, delight in the labor of our hands. Our motto around here is to slow down with our guests. And that doesn't mean, because we're busier than we've ever been before, but the slowed down component is more about a mindset. And that is to be at a point in your life where you know when to stop, when you know when to put that task aside and spend that moment in that conversation that needs to linger a little longer. Or, oh, look at this field, look at this patch. We're going to stop and soak this in, or we are going to put our phone down and let this moment be something we experience rather than record, and so that to me is really what a slowed down lifestyle is. It's not that we take our time to get a task done necessarily and walk slower than usual, but it's more of a heart position.
That's great. It's wonderful. So because you have 4 kids, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What are their ages?
I have a 17-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 9-year-old.
So how do they participate in the farm?
Well, I'll tell you this. This is a great question for today, because over the weekend, my 15-year-old went to state, and my 17-year-old had prom, and all the other family members either went off to state or prom. And so I was left by myself for our first 100-person dinner in May here. And I will tell you, I missed them so much. They are integral. We work together. We are a machine. Now, granted, I've got teenagers, okay? I've got little kids, and they're off with the fairies half the time and they're doing their own thing, but the kids know every component from seed to plate and everything that has to happen in between for our guests to experience a good time. So they're the feet that run back and forth to find everything for me. My 17-year-old is one of my main servers at the table, and my 15-year-old busses the tables and takes away the trash and brings all the scraps to the animals in between the meal. And my girls are involved in many of the other details. So this really is a family operation. My husband was gone, and he works the smoker and the roaster and the grill, and he's one of the main bartenders. So he gets to connect with each guest as well. So I will say that through the years, this has melded together to be their business as well, their farm as well.
That's great. When I had my vegetable and sunflower farm, well, my youngest, she's 17 now too, but that's my youngest. And then I have a 19-year-old and a 23-year-old. But my youngest at 3 years old, I have pictures of her at the farm, and we often talk of the memories and the different experiences. And now my middle one is in college studying economics and sustainability. And she's going to Mexico this summer to with and learning and working with farmers for coffee and chocolate. So it's definitely ingrained in them as well. And I look forward to getting back into it and, giving that experience. Maybe it's to grandkids at that point, but it's wonderful.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
So I want to talk a little bit about the business. I know there's other, you have, when I looked at your website first to now, I see that you have a farm, the farm stay, the Thursday, I didn't see the Thursday dinner on there at first. And you have programs, tons of education programs. So tell me a little bit about that. And then I just want to talk also about some of the business aspect of this, like getting into this, because I have a few questions there. So tell me about the other things you've expanded into, because the education component, especially, someone can come and stay. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So from that 5-acre parcel that we were in, we were there for 7 years. And then, and when we get to the business part, I can talk to you a little bit about the pressures in terms of licensing and permits and occupation, all of that. But those challenges pushed us to pursue a larger parcel just about a quarter mile down. So 3 years ago, we moved, this is our third season. We moved just a half a mile down the road, and we're in a large, we went from 5 acres to 40, just under 40. And this is where we're really being able to develop that permaculture farm. There's just so much available to learn. But I will say that through the years, and we had been doing it over at our other location through our farm camps. We've done kids camp, farm camps through the summer since 2016. And those have continued to grow with parents saying, hey, what about me? Because we've really found that while people are inspired at the table, just the beauty of the courses, the beauty, of sitting together, they want more. And the more part that we know that they want is how to do it themselves. And what I'm not necessarily talking about a full farm to table business or a farm that's producing, but people have lost touch with doing things for themselves. And I want to say that was a little bit of our pain in our living room back in 2014 when my husband said, I'm dying here. We need to do something. It's that deliberance. It's that intentionality. We've farmed out so much that our hands don't know the rhythm of really caring for ourselves. We know our luxury, like self-care experiences, someone else is doing for us too, whether it be a massage or what have you. So literally getting back to the basics was something that we knew was the next step beyond the table. So that's why we launched this year, and we've been working it through for several years, is Locavore U. Locavore U, like university or U, is the idea that we have workshops all throughout the week, taught by a community of instructors who are people who are doing it and have been doing it. This allows them to share their knowledge, also to increase, enhance their income as well, and get back to passing down skills and traditions to other generations, to future generations. And like I always say this, I could get a massage and that benefits me and that's great. And I might feel better and be a little less cranky. But when I learned how to make sourdough for my family, I can pass that down to my daughter, who can pass that on to her friends and to her children. So we really wanted to get back to this traditional skill sharing. And that's what Locavore U is, as well as we have certification courses as well. So people from all around the country can team up with Midwest permaculture and use our farm as a living classroom where they get certified in permaculture or regenerative agriculture. So that's something where people are taking where they're currently at and actually moving into careers and moving into entrepreneurship through those certification and learning programs. So that's Locavore U, and our farm camps or summer camps as well for kids are all about that. This location that we moved to, there were two houses. The original owners of this farm were attorney from the city back in the early 30s, and they wanted to find a place of respite so they could get out of the hustle and bustle of Chicago at that time. And they ended up, they would come to the farm here about once a month, and they hired a farming family who lives in the larger house, who did live there, and they tended the land. And now that's where my family and I live. And we have this lovely cottage that we completely redid where people can come and stay over. We just this weekend had a family of five or actually six, from San Francisco came in to be at Locavore, be here and unwind, escape the hustle and bustle, and join us for a dinner. So they arrived on Friday. They picked their food for their meal, out of our gardens. They got their eggs. They were able to really experience just life on a farm. And that's what we want, because we know that ultimately inspiration leads to pursuing your dreams.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I found you on Iroquois Valley Real Estate Investment Fund website. That's because
Yeah.
I've been looking at different sources of funding, and
Yes.
that's how I
Yes.
found you. You stood out. I just loved what you were doing. It just was really inspiring. So I'm really glad we connected. So let's talk about the business side, because when I
Yeah.
think about doing this, I also I'm from the Northeast. I think about zoning and what you're allowed to do, and there's so many things that are overwhelming about your project. So talk to me about the business side of this.
Yes, this is a true side. And I will tell you, though we have all of these things going on and our food is sold at retail and we have overnight accommodations and we're running classes and programs, this business still just sustains itself season over season, because it is seasonal, because we don't have a lot of value on food, because the requirements, let's just say for someone like me to be able to serve wine, to be able to have people in buildings, to meet health sanitation standards or occupancy, which means people coming and assembling on a property. All of those challenges require major construction, heavy licensing, and insurance. And in fact, insurance still continues to be a problem. I will say that I have to find new insurance, property insurance, all the time, because they say the exposure is too great. Now, keep in mind, I have general liability for business, for commercial, which covers the actual people aspect, but even securing property insurance, which would cover my buildings, just like a homeowner needs, or a farm and ranch policy. This is what continues to be a struggle, because people on a farm makes people nervous. And I really haven't gotten to the bottom of that. I will say that working with your local government is imperative, we are definitely, even in 9 years of operation, in a better place in terms of our local government understanding. I mean, we've since won awards for being innovative. I will say that the Tourism Bureau for our county is one of our biggest champions and cheerleaders, and that has definitely served us well. Um, and so we've garnered a lot of support along the way from important stakeholders. But when there were times where we were going to be shut down season over season, in
Wow,
fact,
really?
we were
Wow.
for 5 straight years, we had to struggle with attorneys and the county, and would be just opening up for provisional pieces. And it has to do with parking lots, and it has to do with egress and ingress. And so what happens is they tend to put a Main Street requirement overlay over a rural property that's set out and doesn't have the same systems and infrastructure as a business on Main Street. You know what I'm saying? So it's like I have well water, so my pressure is low. You know, we have wells. We're not on city water. I have a septic field. It's different than a sewer system. In terms of, I mean, we're not putting a lot of cement pathways through here, or, blacktopping fields, So there's a lot of different challenges with that. But the reality is when you know what you want to do, you are going to walk through those challenges and obstacles, and you're going to see them as a way to be better. And that's exactly what has happened here. And not only that, but you end up, when you go through these hard things, when you go through these impossible doors, when you have to rely on other people, ask them questions, an attorney, can you represent me here? Could you come and stand up at a board meeting for me here? Can you do this? They come along this adventure, and you have cheerleaders all around you, people who want to see you break through. And that's what we wanted. We wanted to build a community by doing something hard, by living out a dream. And people need people to step out and be brave to follow their dream, because it inspires them. Whether they're going to step out on their own or they're just going to rally around you, we need people to do that. So we push through. One of my big arguments with it was, hey, remember when you know how most breweries are in industrial parks now? It's like that's what they're at, because industry was going away, manufacturing. So now we had these industrial parks that were vacant. Well, guess what? The microbrewery and the breweries popped up and said, these are an awesome atmosphere for our type of business. And the existing buildings were the right specs for them to put their big equipment in and everything. And now that's where you expect to go to a brewery, is in an industrial park. So it's shifting with the culture. It's changing times. Even our office building landscape in downtown Chicago is much different after the pandemic, because people are working from home now. So when local government, and it takes us, or we the people, to show them that things are changing. And if we can also show them that this is great. For example, Kankakee County. Yesterday, I had about 5 guests, which totaled about 5 different groups, which totaled about 18 to 20 people of our table of 100. We're from California, South Dakota, Michigan, Wisconsin. So we have people coming in and staying in the hotels in Kankakee County. And you know what? They do recognize it, but it took a while. It takes patient endurance and a lot of tenacity. But you end up bringing a community along with you, where the attorneys who helped us, realtors who helped us, a lot of the people who had to champion and fight for us, they're now like our best ambassadors, because they won too.
That's great. That's great. And what about funding? I know you had mentioned in one of the podcasts some of the people who sat at your table
Yes,
helped
yes.
out. How did that work out? Because obviously that's probably one of the biggest obstacles for people who want to make especially land right now, anywhere in the
Oh, yes,
US. So,
absolutely. Yes. Land acquisition, and then is huge, and it's a barrier to entry in this in as to being a farmer. Even with all of the incredible programs that are offered through many different places, from USDA to some of the non-for-profits like Healing Soils Foundation, who are incredible. And I'd like to talk a little bit about them in a minute, but we have land acquisition is a major issue, obviously. And that's everything to do with property purchasing. Now we have insurance issues with getting farm businesses insured, adequately insured is a challenge. Then we also have the issues of utilities. Okay. My propane and electricity here is 2 mortgage payments to keep the place powered, let's say. And I'm on the fence with all of the hoorah about solar as well and wind. So, and even implementing, some of those systems, it's a big deal. It's a big deal because in the wintertime, when you're not selling anything, you're still keeping animals warm. You're keeping seedlings growing. So the greenhouses and the stables require a lot of energy. So utilities are a barrier as well, from your electrical bill to your propane bill to all of it. And let's face it as well, when you live on a large property, any work is more expensive than living in a suburban lot. So if you're getting part of your driveway repaired, it's much bigger than what it would be on a quarter-acre lot. So the expense of maintaining the farm is substantial, from utilities to maintenance. And that is, I mean, that's a staggering expense for us. I will say that is a challenge for us season over season. And then it's when things grow a little quiet in November, even though we've got events November and December. But November until May is very lean. And you can't always prepare for that, depending on what's come in. So we're always, thinking on how to stay afloat with that. And then you have places like Iroquois Valley Farms, and you have places like Healing Soils Foundation, place like Pot Liquor as well, Pot Liquor Capital. These are all organizations and businesses and non-for-profits that have supported us tremendously. Even our FSA has done great in terms of finding programs to help us stay afloat. I can't speak enough about Healing Soils Foundation and Pot Liquor. They've been incredible. I would suggest anyone who's listening to your program would definitely want to contact these entities. Pot Liquor for if you're a BIPOC farmer, which I am. And Healing Soils is a non-for-profit arm of Iroquois Valley Farm, and they have rich programs to help people live out their dreams in farming, with the understanding that the way we farm is good for the planet. The way we are growing food is for future generations and for the sustainability of our planet. So that's their real mission there as well. The USDA, their EQIP program, or the conservation program, is fantastic as well. So there are a lot of programs, but you have to spend a lot of time looking for that. So I would say, I left a desk job where I did look a lot into grants and a lot into marketing, all of these things. They've served me well for here, because I would say I do as much of that work on the farm as a farmer as I did at a desk job for some of the businesses that I represented. So this is not lucrative. These are not lucrative jobs. For us, success has not necessarily been about the monetary acquisition, but more so in the fact that we believe that we're healing land and lives. And for us, that's our legacy. And so as long as we can make it from one season to the next, bring people along our journey with us. So have a stable place to employ people, be able to collaborate with other farms so that our table is also a vehicle for other farms to bring their food through. As long as we can build that community and remain that sustainability and see that there's value in things other than the actual dollars, but trading, bartering, your time for another farmer is very valuable. So there's some exchanges there. So those are some of the hurdles, definitely.
Do you have a vision for the next few years? Anything that you want to achieve or add, or something you're thinking about during those winter months?
Yes, actually, well, number one, our main focus now going forward is to implement our permaculture design plan, which is completely transforming our front 20 acres, which had been industrially farmed for years, and conventionally farmed, is to really create that into a sustainable prairie with growing. It's really all about our watershed and how we're moving water around, how we're getting the chemicals from the adjacent field off, cleaned, and then off of our property and back into the Kankakee River, which is the large water source around here. So our immediate plan is to follow through with our design plan, which is lots of trees, lots of swales, lots of ridges. It's also bringing a lot more livestock on, and working in collaboration with them. But also, one of the things that we're looking at doing in the winter months with other farms that struggle during the winter months that we are aware of, also approaching businesses and organizations like Iroquois Healing Soils, Potlicker, and some of the other, is to create a conference for people who are interested in this type of work to come and learn and meet the personalities and listen to the experts. So not just a workshop or anything like that. It wouldn't even be held here on my farm, but we're looking at putting together a large conference where people have access to the people who know, and people have access to a community of people who kind of know how to forge through. Because let's face it, this is a new era of agriculture where you're starting to see farmers say, I want more on my land. I want to do more. I want, to diversify, our production and skills and experiences here, So I think that a conference like that is important. And so that's something we're going to be looking at organizing, and it'll be done during the slow months.
So when you look back, just thinking about advice for someone who might want to get involved in something, farming, agritourism. When you look back to when you began, are there things that you would have preferred knowing, before you got involved, or was it okay that it happened the way it happened?
That's a good question. There's definitely that hindsight component, but I don't think if I hadn't gone through those things, the vision would be as refined and as important. So you have to go through the hard things. You've got to go through the storm. You have to, literally clear your path, and because you need to come in contact with all of those hurdles, because it really is used as a refinement tool. It really is. And so, yes, there's certain things like, hey, let's check in with local government and see what that is, but also they didn't know what they were learning either, so you don't know where the other party, that may be the tension, that may be the oppressor in certain instances, they have a dance to learn too, and then you guys can end up becoming allies, so I say, slow down, uh think and ponder and wonder about what it is that you want your hands to do and your heart to do, and then go for it, and know that it's gonna be hard, and you're going to come upon obstacles that should make you quit. And don't always think that comfort and safety and what's sensible means that's the right deal, and also, one thing that I will say I have absolutely learned is I don't need a throng of people around me saying, this makes sense to us. Yes, go and do that. I had no reason to leave my previous job. I loved it. I was well compensated. I was, honored in that job. It was close to where we worked. I loved our home. All those things. The masses would say, keep doing that. This is good. Very few people thought it was a good idea for us to completely abandon that and then move into the country. Many people thought, hey, you're barely making it on your 5 acres. Why the heck would you try to purchase, 30 plus more acres? Okay, you're lean right now. Why would you expand? You know, but again, if we hadn't kept moving forward because we were being true to what we believed in our hearts, then we wouldn't have found those 20 people who sat around the table who said, yeah, you should pursue that bigger property, and we'll give you 50% of the purchase price. We're going to invest in your vision. Again, if you stay safe, you just don't get to experience those big blessings either.
I love it. Do you think the kids or some of the kids will take over?
We do not have that pressure. We don't even really talk that way. We let them randomly talk about it. But that's something, again, changing the dynamic of approaching agriculture and the family farm. I look around, and the properties that are around me that are abandoned had this idea that the farm was just going to go down from generation to generation. And I don't think that that is a good burden to put on our kids. Here's the deal. Their life with us is a life for them we steward them, right? We're stewarding our children. So you know what? The life that Dad and I chose is an opportunity for you to learn and cultivate and be prepared for your future. But this is our dream. It doesn't have to be yours. Now, if it becomes your dream, we're all about it. But this is ours. And we think this was a great way to raise you guys. And you got to see entrepreneurship, and you got to see resourcefulness, and you got to see patient endurance and all that jazz. And it's really cool when we're having a dinner party. It's like the best, most beautiful dining experience you'll ever have. But at the end of the day, I think this was just a process and a journey for my kids to get where they want to go. And so we don't really talk about legacy in terms of handing down land and burden to another. But the legacy is a living legacy, not one strapped in property and deed.
That's great. That's a great answer. So I have a question. This table, is it one big table or is it sections? I have to ask.
No, you're right.
And who built it?
Impossible. There's no doorway. There's no tractor that could load that. So the table is really, it's simple, but it's well designed in that it's 10 and 12-foot sections that actually slide into one another and are bolted underneath each time. So it goes from a solid table with legs to an extension that then slips into another solid. So it was well planned out. My husband's a biomed engineer, and so he was able to kind of figure out some things with his friend who's a carpenter. But it's a rustic table too. I mean, it's like got bird poop stains from birds that have eaten berries. We sand it down, it's clean, but it's rustic for sure. But it's long, and when it's set with all of the flowers that we put on there and the napkins rolled and then everyone's sitting there, it's absolutely one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. Your story is amazing. What you created is amazing. I can imagine the amount of work. But you're a great example to a lot of people about, going after a dream, and not staying with, like you said, the job in suburbia, and you took a chance, and you're giving your kids an amazing experience.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I will definitely keep in touch. I might have some questions. And I will try. I definitely am intrigued. So
let me know if you want to stay in the cottage sometime, or even our glamp site. We have a glamp site. So, feel free.
And even some of the university stuff sounds, the Locavore U sounds really intriguing. Just, the education is so important.
Mm-hmm.
I have a friend from Indiana, so maybe
wonderful.
Maybe there'll be a visit. So
wonderful.
So thank you so much, and thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Jen. Take care.
I hope our AgriTourist podcast prompts you to think more about where your food comes from, whether it be your vegetables, fruits, meats, and even those sweet treats. Don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with someone you think may truly benefit from or be inspired by it. visit us at agra-tourist.com. Until next time. As we are learning from many of our farmers and entrepreneurs, strong connections help propel our visions. Through my interview with Lisa Chase from the University of Vermont Extension and Vermont Tourism Research Center, I was connected to an exciting and new organization called the Global Agritourism Network, or GAN for short. The Global Network is made up of agritourism stakeholders from around the world. They include farmers and ranchers, researchers, educators, community planners, policymakers, agricultural service providers, and tour operators, among others. It is currently free to join, so if you have any interest in agritourism, check them out at agritourism.edu/GAN, or just Google Global Agritourism Network. The link will be in our show notes as well. You never know, this global network may help you take your agritourism vision to the next level.